I'm Jess Montgomery, and I'm the author of the Kinship Historical Mystery series. These books are set in 1920s Appalachia, and they're inspired by Ohio's true first female sheriff in 1925, Maud Collins. The first book in the series is The Widows and introduces Lily Ross, who becomes sheriff when her husband is killed in the line of duty, and she's asked to fill in. In real life, there was no mystery about how or why Maud's husband, Fletcher, was killed in the line of duty. But in my books, that is the mystery of the very first book in the series, The Widows, who killed Lily's husband and why. As the series progresses, she gets to decide to run for sheriff in her own right in the second book, The Hollows, as Maud did in real life. Um, she ran for sheriff in her own right as well. And in the third book, The Stills, set in 1927, Lily has to deal with prohibition in a way she hasn't before. Up until now, she's kind of turned a, you know, blind eye toward the stills that have always been in the hills and hollers where she lives. But in this particular book, bootleggers and gangsters are coming to her county and they're bringing crime and death with them. And so she has to deal with moonshining and bootlegging in a way she hasn't before. She can't just ignore it for the sake of her county's safety and the people that she cares the most about. So that book is called The Stills, and I'm so delighted to be part of the Ohioana 2022 Book Festival and to be on the historical mystery panel and chat about historical mysteries and to share a bit about my novel, The Stills. So, what I'd like to do now is just read to you part of the prologue that kicks the novel off. Hopefully, it gives you a taste of the style of writing and what the story is going to be like. Just a little bit of setup. At the very beginning, we have a young boy named Zebediah, and he works for a moonshiner. And his job is to simply kind of hang out in the woods, keep an eye, and watch and make sure that people who come for their bottles um, actually leave money in the jug to pay for them. This was actually something that was done often in stills back in the old days. There would be young boys who were hired just simply to keep an eye out and make sure, the honor system wasn't violated when people came by to either get their own bottle or to take a swig from a communal bottle, which is kind of hard to imagine these days. But to take a swig from a communal bottle and leave some coin behind to pay for that swig. So that's Zebediah's job. He's from a poor family where there's illness and issues in his family. He's supposed to be at school. It's around Thanksgiving in November 1927. But instead of being at school, he's keeping an eye on this still and hoping to earn some money of his own. So here we go. A snapping sound startles Zebediah to wide-eyed alertness. In time to see that it's just a small branch, wind flicked from a treetop to the ground near the plank. Zebediah shifts on the hard ground, seeking a comfortable divot. The pouch of coins digs into his hip. His stomach rumbles. That hard biscuit won't stave off hunger for long. He'd like to earn enough to get himself something else he'd seen in town, a new Winchester repeating shotgun. Better than this kid's gun. He'd have to buy it himself. Pa won't trust him with it after that hunting trip where he'd shook so bad. Footsteps crunched the frozen spikes of grass on the other side of the old iron furnace. Zebediah quickly goes back down on his belly like a sneaky snake. He grins at the notion, hidden but still able to see, who approaches. He doesn't recognize the men, and they're not the sort he expects. Farmers, coal miners, hunters. One is in a fine wool coat and boots, the other in just a suit and two-toned leather lace-up dress shoes. Both wear fedora hats. Zebediah frowns. There's a speakeasy in Kinship for men like this. Everyone knows that. Even the ladies and children at the church they used to attend know. The pastor railed against it often enough. Here it is, the man in the coat and boots says, gesturing at the makeshift shelf. Zebediah's frown deepens. This man's voice has the sound of the hills and the hollers, each wood jangling into the next like beads on a string. But something makes him seem an outsider even more than the younger man, coatless and in fancy shoes, too fragile for backwoods hiking. Are these men part of the revenuers people have been talking about? The coatless younger man shivers so hard that his voice crackles as he asks, "This is it? You were supposed to lead me to Vogel's main operation." Vogel. Zebediah wonders who that is. Well, one small operation leads to the bigger ones. The older man grins, as if he's clever, but he looks more like a rat baring its teeth. Zebediah's heart pounds. Something is not right. He wants to yell at the younger man, "Run!" The younger man says, "It had better. We're paying you enough." "No, the pay isn't all that I'm after. You promised." "You'd better not be toying with the Bureau. We're deadly serious." The younger man pulls out a revolver, but it shakes in his hand. Damn, mister, thinks Zebediah. He's rooting for him, whether he's a revenuer or not. Stop shaking. Maybe he can't help it, just like Zebediah can't. The older man's expression stiffens. "Let me show you some markings on the jug that will help you believe me. A symbol that leads straight to Vogel. Put away the damn gun first." Markings? The only marking was 3 X's, signifying that the whiskey was triple distilled. That won't lead to whoever this Vogel is. As the younger man puts away his gun, something blue and gold pinned to his vest flashes in the spare morning sun. He steps toward the plank. The older man pulls out a pistol from inside his overcoat and shoots, grazing the stone furnace. At the cracking sound, the younger fellow whirls around, and a second shot hits him in the head. Blood spurts as he goes down to his knees, dropping his weapon, grabbing at his head, knocking his fedora to the ground. But then his eyes roll back. His bloody hands drop, and he falls forward. The older man strides over, kicks the young fellow over to his back, stares down as if regarding nothing more than a fallen tree limb. Run! The moonshiner had told Zebediah to run if there was trouble, and this is the greatest mess he's ever seen. But all he can do is stare, transfixed. The older man's mouth curls, just the slightest self-congratulatory smile. Startled by the odd, cold reaction, Zebediah gasps, drawing the man's glassy gaze. Zebediah holds his breath. A chipmunk darts out from the old iron furnace, making the man jump, look away. Then he laughs, pulls a flask from his hip pocket, tries to take a swig, frowns, irritated that it's empty. He opens the sipping jug, drinks, 1 gulp, 2, then sloppily pours moonshine into his flask, which he caps and pockets as he walks away, whistling some merry tune, off-key and wheezy. Tears burn Zebediah's cheeks as he waits for the man's wretched whistling to fade. Finally, the only sounds are a thin hum of breeze, birdsong, creaking bare-limbed trees. For a long time, Zebediah lies where he is, staring at the younger man's body. What to do? Wait for someone else to come along? Run to find the moonshiner? The man's hand twitches. Zebediah swallows back a whimper. Surely that was just the man's body, shutting down. He'd seen that with deer and pheasant out on hunts with Pa, the post-death twitch. But then there's a soft moan. It grows louder. Zebediah rises stiffly, as if he's aged a decade in the last minutes. His mouth is sticky, parched. He opens the sipping jug, wipes the top with his jacket sleeve. He takes 3 long gulps. The liquid burns as it goes down. He gasps. The man moans again. Zebediah moves slowly toward the man, like he's trying to run in a muddy creek bed. The man's eyes open in a glassy-eyed stare. He does not appear to be breathing. Had Zebediah only imagined the man's moans? The man's jacket, fallen open, reveals a pin on his vest, the flashing item from moments ago. The pin, knocked loose by the man's fall, is in the shape of a shield, with a bright royal blue background, a coin-like insignia, a U, an S, the other letters rising up, floating around like they do in his schoolbooks. Ruthie would know right away what the letters say. Ruthie. Zebediah starts crying again. He wants his big sister. Another moan. The man's eyelids flutter. Zebediah stares at him. Mister? And thus ends the prologue to The Stills. The next chapter, we meet up with Lily, our sheriff, as she starts to untangle what's going to happen in her county with these gangsters and bootleggers, bringing some death and destruction, excuse me, to her county. And it's also co-narrated by a woman named Fiona, who's associated with one of the bootleggers. But I'm not going to tell you more. I hope you'll get your own copy and find out what happens. And I look forward to being with you at the Ohioana Book Festival. Thank you.